Hi, I'm Mr. Walsh. I'm an instructional coach at Thomas Jefferson Middle School. For the last few weeks, our 8th grade U.S. history students have been studying the beginning of the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States. For today's lesson, our students will be playing a board game that simulates the United States Marine Corps' surprise amphibious invasion against North Korean forces on Incheon Beach. Before computers, simulations were run using board games. While the rules may take us a little while to learn, I hope you find the process interesting, entertaining, and of course educational. By September 1950, United Nations and American forces faced a desperate situation on the Korean Peninsula. That summer, communist forces from North Korea managed to push the United States and its allies all the way across South Korea. Under the command of General Douglas MacArthur, the central figure in this photo, United Nations forces, spearheaded by the United States Marine Corps, launched an amphibious invasion on North Korean forces occupying the South Korean city of Incheon, highlighted in purple on the map. The surprise invasion was a success. Helped by a massive naval bombardment and airstrikes, Marines moved ashore and quickly overwhelmed North Korean forces. While not exact in scale, our simulation uses a hexagonal map that illustrates various geographic features found on Incheon. Before the simulation begins, the class will be divided up into two opposing forces, the North Koreans and the United States Marine Corps. This chain of command chart shows the various units and how students are to play their assigned roles. Each figure on the chain of command chart represents a student and what unit they will control during the game. There are 26 spots, but we can adjust depending on the size of the class. You'll notice that there are two commanders overseeing the two forces. The job of these commanders is to help coordinate the general movement of the game. It moves fast, and each commander can't control everything his or her teammates decide to do. The Marine commander gets control of the aircraft, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. As we play, we'll probably have one student aiming the units and another student rolling the dice. Well, by now, you're probably wondering, how does my team win? Each army has two objectives. For the North Koreans, they have to hold on to the beach for 12 moves and or destroy 50% of the Marine Corps' forces. For the U.S. Marines, they have to move 25% of their forces across the board to the other side. Along the way, they can also win by destroying 75% of the North Korean forces. Although we're playing a game, it really is a simulation. And simulated war games use variables that affected the outcome of the battles. As you recall, the Marine landings at Incheon were a surprise attack on the North Korean forces. To simulate that fact, North Korean forces will start the game by rolling a 10-sided dice. If the North Korean roll is a 7, 8, 9, or a 10, their tank units show up on the game map at the end of turn 6. If the North Korean roll is a 1 through 6, their tank units show up on the game board at the start of turn 9. Morale refers to how well a unit performs on the battlefield. If an officer is within 4 hexagons of any unit that is shooting, those units get a +1 added to each shooting roll. If a medical unit is within 4 hexagons of any unit that is shooting, those units get a +1 added to each shooting roll as well. The next variable is terrain. Terrain is the geographical features of the game board. A rise in the terrain means an increase in the height of the terrain by 1 level of the cardboard. Units can only move up 1 hexagon rise at a time. There are sheer cliffs represented by dark brown. These formations cannot be scaled by any units. Any unit behind a 1 rise level will be protected by a -1 of any dice roll aimed at them. Any unit behind a 2 rise level will be protected by a -2 of any dice roll aimed at them. Units can move or cross a 1 to 2 rise in one move. Now let's talk about the basic movement of forces. The hexagon is the basic unit of measurement for the game. Only one unit, except artillery units, can occupy a hexagon,
Infantry can move 3 hexagons in any direction per move. Infantry can shoot before or after they move, but only once per turn. Just like infantry, officers can move 3 hexagons in any direction per move, and they can shoot before or after, but only once per turn. Medical units can only move 1 hexagon in any direction per move. They can be hit by fire just as any other unit. North Korean forces do not have medical units. Bazookas can move 3 hexagons in any direction per move. Infantry can shoot before or after, but only once per turn. Radiomen can move 3 hexagons in any direction, and radiomen can also shoot before or after, but yet again, only once per turn. Machine gun units can move 3 hexagons in any direction per move. Machine gun units can only shoot or move during a turn. They cannot do both. Snipers. Snipers can move 3 hexagons in any direction per move. Snipers can shoot before or after they move, but only once per turn. Additionally, if a sniper is moved during a turn, their extra range is unavailable. Mortar teams. Mortars can move 3 hexagons in any direction per move. However, if a mortar unit is moved during a turn, it cannot fire during the same turn. Tanks can move 9 hexagons on flat ground. Tanks can only move over 1 rise in terrain. This maneuver will end the tank's move regardless of whether or not remaining hexagon moves are left. Tanks can shoot before or after they move, but yet again only once per turn. Artillery can only be moved 1 hexagon per move. Additionally, if an artillery unit is moved during a turn, it cannot fire during the same turn. Air support. Airplanes can move anywhere across the game board. Airplanes are only available for 3 out of the 12 total moves of the game. And now we get to how the game is actually won, by having units shoot. Each player is only responsible for the shooting of their own units. There are 3 lengths of yarn that are used to determine the range of each type of weapon. Most infantry units use the shortest piece of yarn, while the heavy weapons use the longer strands. Infantry. Each unit can only fire 1 shot per turn. They can roll either before or after they move. They roll a 6-sided dice. If they roll a 1, 2, or a 3, their shot is missed. If they roll a 4, 5, or a 6, their shot has hit its target, and that target is removed from the game. The range of fire is determined by the shortest piece of yarn. Officers follow the same rules as the infantry. Bazooka teams use the same dice roll as infantry. However, their shots also hit the target's 1 hexagon behind the aimed target. Bazooka and mortar units are the only foot-based units that can hit tanks. Radio units use the same rules as infantry for dice. The main job of radio units is to coordinate airstrikes. A radio unit must be within 10 hexagons of a target for an airstrike to be successful. Machine gun units. Be sure to remember the machine gun team's rules for movement. A machine gun unit rolls a 6-sided dice. If they roll a 1, 2, or 3, their shot is missed. If they roll a 4, 5, or a 6, their shot has hit the target. They can also hit any target 1 hexagon to the left and right of the target they were aiming for. The range of fire is determined by the medium piece of yarn. Snipers use the same dice rolls as infantry. If a sniper unit has not moved during their turn, their range is determined by the longest piece of yarn. If they have moved before firing, the sniper must use the shortest piece of yarn to determine range. Mortar units use the same dice rolls as infantry too. However, units moving during a turn cannot fire during that turn. Mortar range is determined by the medium piece of yarn. Tanks use the same rule for dice as the infantry. Units can move before or after they fire, but they can only fire once per turn. Tank range is determined by the longest piece of yarn. Artillery uses the six-sided dice rule as well. Units cannot move and fire on the same time. Artillery range is determined by the longest piece of yarn. Air support. Airplanes are only available for 3 out of the 12 moves of the game. The Marine Corps commander will roll a 10-sided dice. They must roll a 3 through 10 for their shot to be successful. Using the shortest piece of yarn, everything within that radius is destroyed, including Marine units who can be taken out of the game by friendly fire. Air support can be destroyed by the North Korean commander rolling a 10-sided dice and getting a 7. Remember, at the beginning of the game, the North Korean commander will roll the 10-sided die to determine if the North Korean forces are surprised. The commander should only tell his or her forces so that they can use the arrival of the tanks to their advantage. After the North Korean commander rolls the dice, the U.S. Navy will begin shelling the beach. This is represented by the tossing of 5 cotton balls onto the board game while standing 5 feet away from the board on the watered side. All units in the hexagons where the cotton balls land are destroyed. Marine units will start on the light blue hexagons touching the dark blue hexagons of the water. Tanks can be placed in the light blue hexagons as well. North Korean units will get to move or shoot first.